Welcome
Welcome
back.
back.
Okay, so today is another, I guess, internal mystery request. And we came across this because this is actually all over the news right now. It's kind of like a current story in terms of what's happening and this potential, I guess, crime.
Do you have a viewpoint already?
I am 100% convinced that I know who it is.
100%.
Yeah, I think I know who it is.
100%.
Okay, 99%. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty confident.
It's getting less and less.
Please no.
Yeah. Okay, so this is titled The Disappearance of Alissa Turney, a TikTok mystery. 2 weeks ago, Sarah Turney is the sister that I just, told you about. She turned to TikTok to try to get exposure regarding the disappearance of her sister, Alissa Turney, in 2001. So this happened roughly 19 years ago.
I did not expect to blow up on TikTok overnight, so thank you. And you've been asking for a story time, so let me tell you why I'm even here. In 2001, my sister Alissa Turney went missing.
On the 17th of May, 2001, 17-year-old Alissa Turney, a junior at a high school in Phoenix, Arizona, went missing. It was the last day of school before summer break. Michael was meant to pick up Sarah Turney, but he failed to show up after school to pick her up, and so she actually ended up walking to a friend's house to wait for him. And sometime around 7 p.m., her father eventually arrived, and then informed her that her sister Alissa was missing. Sarah used her father's phone to try to contact Alissa on the way home, but was unable to reach her. Upon reaching the house, Michael had Sarah check Alissa's bedroom, and there she found the contents of Alissa's backpack scattered on her bed, her cell phone on top of her dresser, and a note that read, quote, "Dad and Sarah, when you dropped me off at school today, I decided I really am going to California. Sarah, you said you really wanted me gone. Now you have it. Dad, I took $300 from you. That's why I saved my money." End quote. So that's what the note said. And it was sitting on top of her dresser with her cell phone.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was it in her handwriting?
It was in her handwriting.
So when $300 is not going to get you very far.
No.
So it's kind of like it's kind of weird that you would not take anything else with you. Like if she had a backpack, when you take your backpack with you,
You think? And your cell phone.
and your cell phone, like if you're planning on not coming back, you would definitely take everything you can with you.
Yeah.
Because you need to survive tonight and the next night and the next day.
Yeah.
Unless you're going somewhere that has all that stuff.
Yeah, but even like the journey there, you could still need stuff.
Yeah, like even like if you go, like that time we went to Sydney and you packed like a large suitcase.
Was that me or was that Mom's?
One.
Like the 3 suitcases for like 2 days away.
One suitcase for every day.
Okay. So initially, Sarah wasn't surprised, as Alissa did have an aunt in California who she had spoken about recently and with whom she had expressed a desire to live, as she did not get along with Michael. That night, at around 11 p.m., Michael called the police to report Alissa as a runaway. The police opened a missing persons file, but no investigation or follow-up was done, as she had been reported as a runaway, and that her location was known to be California. So one important thing to note at this point is that he was an ex-cop, so he would also know how to report things so that they, the level of investigation or alarm, he would know how to control that based on how he reported it to the police. A week later, Michael told police that he had received a call from her early in the morning where she blamed him as being the primary reason she left. She claimed she was never returning. However, he was unable to provide a record of this call, despite the fact that he had installed a passive recording system on the home phone, which recorded all incoming and outgoing phone calls, and which had been in place for over 20 years. But somehow this call hadn't been recorded.
What about from the phone company? Wouldn't they be able to record at least that call was received from a particular number?
I think that he provided like a phone, like a call record, but he didn't provide any of the audio. So they can't verify that it was from her.
But they
or from where.
What about the number that was?
I think it was a private number.
Oh.
Just that there was a call received that day at like in the morning.
Seems very fishy.
It's very fishy.
It does smell fishy.
In 2006, several years after Alissa had disappeared, the police received a lead from a man named Thomas Heimer. Heimer was a prisoner serving time in a Florida prison for murder, and he sent the police a letter confessing to her murder. The police eventually concluded that the letter was a hoax, but during the course of their investigation, they began to realize that there were discrepancies in the case itself.
But everyone thought that she just ran away, and the police didn't even look into it until 2008, 7 years later. That's when they sat me down, told me that my father had been molesting Alissa for our entire lives. They told me I had a sister I didn't know about, and that they were raiding our home right that minute, looking for evidence that he killed my sister.
So, in the 7 years, so at that time 7 years had passed, in the 7 years since Alissa had gone missing, she had not contacted a single one of her friends or family, including the aunt that she had supposedly left Arizona to go live with. The $1,800 that she had saved remained untouched in her bank account, and her social security number was never used, which meant that she had never gotten a job, never enrolled in school, nothing. Police learned that the day that Alissa went missing, she had been picked up by Michael at around 11 a.m. This was confirmed by her then boyfriend John, who confirmed that they had also made plans to meet up later in the evening at an end-of-year party, and this was further corroborated by numerous friends. So she got picked up at 11 that day, like midday, and then she had made plans with her boyfriend and her friends to go to a party later that day.
Did her boyfriend see her stepdad pick her up?
I think he must have, because he confirmed that, yes, she had in fact been picked up by her stepfather.
Okay.
When confronted with this new information, Michael then retold the events of the day to acknowledge the lunchtime pickup and explained that once they had arrived at home, they had gotten into a fight about house rules, which ended in her storming off to her room, leaving him to run errands. He had previously told other versions of that day, including that she had run off to be with a biker or that she had never gone to school that day at all. So he had told many different versions of this to different people, to like neighbors, to friends, to different people. Upon further investigation, police also discovered that Michael was extremely paranoid and litigious. He documented every incoming and outgoing call to the house, which we talked about earlier, and had cameras placed around his property, including a hidden camera in the vent of the living room, which were recording footage 24/7.
So
When they requested access to the videotapes for the day that she went missing, Michael told them that he had personally reviewed them and that there was nothing of interest, and he refused to hand the footage over. And then when they asked for the audio tapes of the day, he said that unfortunately that day the recorder had been turned off, so nothing had been recorded. So he had every day previous and every day after, but for some reason, that day is a complete empty void. Okay. At this point, the police had enough probable cause to search the house.
But they actually found 26 pipe bombs, the largest pipe bomb bust in Phoenix history.
In doing so, investigators came across 26 homemade pipe bombs and a 90-page manifesto written by Michael. In the manifesto, Michael claimed that Alissa had run away, but that he believed she had been followed by two men from the electrical union that he used to work for. During his time there, he had been a whistleblower, and he believed that these men had taken revenge on him by murdering Alissa. He then described avenging her death by killing the two men, which he also told like one of his other relatives. But contrary to this, the men he referred to in the manifesto were later found to have died of natural causes. As a psychology PhD, like what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it seems really odd, and I also think it's really odd behavior that he's so paranoid that he has set up all these cameras, and yet he's doing something so illegal.
Yeah.
Well, I feel that the camera setup and everything might be for his own protection because he's doing all this illegal stuff. Is that like?
But then he's incriminating himself. Like if
If he
these
were to ever get out, he incriminated himself as well.
Yeah, it sounds
like
like
things don't really add up to me, because you have a situation where there's potentially recordings, like if he's been doing kind of the wrong thing, especially to his daughter, then some of that may like have shown up on the footage. So that's odd. The second thing is, why would you confess to murdering two people when you're being wanted for the murder of one person? So like that is like, you know, you don't cover up a murder with another murder. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, I didn't murder this person, I murdered the two people that killed that person. Like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
You know, you're still going away for life, you know, like and then they find out that they didn't even get murdered. Like, so what was that like?
Whole story about.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that? That's a mental issue, isn't it?
It's hard to say. Like, there's so much that goes into like actually diagnosing someone. It's just a very odd, for just taking this into account, it's just a very odd lie or story that he created.
Yeah, it seems really weird.
What were the pipe bombs for?
I don't know. Maybe there was further information in the manifesto, but because this article was focused on Alissa Turney, they like didn't go into that.
I think we need a bit of a backstory on who this.
On Michael Turney.
Yeah, it's like if he's a police officer, was he a police officer at the time when she went missing?
No.
So he was retired at the time. So he's a police officer, and then he decides to get into making pipe bombs, coming up with manifestos where he murders people. Like, does he have a fascination with being a criminal? Or, like, I don't understand. Like, as a police officer, you've been on the other side of all this. Why, once you retire, you become what you were trying to stop?
I mean, is there a possibility that, like, as part of doing a job like that, or it's kind of like being in the military where there's, like, an element of PTSD or trauma that changes your I guess, mental state or, like, mental health, so that you feel like you have to overcompensate for some of, like, the injustices and things like that?
Yeah.
I think Michael makes a really good point. Like, it's important to kind of know more about him to be able to understand his motives for everything he's doing now.
yeah.
Okay, so police also recovered huge amounts of paperwork and hundreds of hours of audio and video footage, but were unable to find any from the day that Alissa went missing. During the search, letters were found where Alissa claimed she'd been molested by Michael, and this was later corroborated by friends, her boyfriend, and even teachers. They also discovered that Michael had forced Alissa on numerous occasions to sign behavioral contracts that included a clause stating that he had never sexually or physically abused her. These were clearly coerced.
But also, I'm shocked that her teachers didn't do anything. If a student reported that, like, I feel like they have an obligation to report that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Well, okay, so get this. Approximately a year before Alissa disappeared, Child Protective Services received a call from Michael stating that his stepdaughter was going to call them with false accusations that he had sexually abused her so that he would buy her a car. And he wanted to know what he should do as a parent if he were falsely accused of abuse. So that's why he called Child Protective Services. And it should be noted that Alissa had in fact had a car before, but she'd sold the car because she was actually afraid to drive. And Sarah has said in the past that Michael often volunteered to buy her a car if she wanted one. So, like, he wasn't being, like, manipulated into anything. So he reached out to Child Protective Services. Like, maybe he was concerned that she was telling teachers or she was going to call them herself or whatever it was to report abuse. And then he wanted to know, what does he do as a parent if he gets falsely accused of abuse?
Wow.
Michael Turney eventually pleaded guilty and served 10 years in prison for the 26 pipe bombs and was declared to have a paranoid personality disorder and was required by the court to participate in mental health treatments. However, he was never investigated or prosecuted for Alissa's disappearance. The latest update in the case is that on the 9th of June 2020, it was announced that the Phoenix Police Department would be submitting Alissa's case to the prosecutor's office for charges against Michael Turney. So finally there's momentum in the case, and he is going to be formally charged. A few other details that are worth noting that came out of some of the information that was published by Sarah is that one witness reported seeing Michael purchasing a large amount of lye around the time of Alissa's disappearance, which he has acknowledged. He has also been described as being extremely familiar with and knowledgeable of the Arizona desert.
Wait, what did he buy the life for? Did he say?
No, he didn't say.
But he acknowledged that he bought it.
He acknowledged that he bought it. He must have said it was for gardening or something. At the time Alissa went missing, Michael owned 2 identical trucks, one of which he hid from his 6 children, and shortly after Alissa's disappearance, both trucks were sold. Initially, he refused to give the police his DNA, I think until he was arrested. And he has continued to refuse to be formally interviewed by police. He has stated that he will only consent to an interview under the following conditions, and these are the conditions that he gave. That the meeting be conducted on live television, that he be given permission to interrogate the entire family, the judge in his pipe bomb case, John Walsh, who's the host of America's Most Wanted, and 2 detectives from the Phoenix Police Department, and that the aforementioned people would be given polygraphs administered by Canadian operators. So those are his conditions for him to be interviewed by the police.
That's such a weird condition.
How weird.
Yeah. And then there was that recording that we listened to before of the conversation between him and his daughter Sarah, where he is quoted as saying that, be
there at the deathbed, Sarah, and I'll give you all the honest answers you want to hear.
Why don't you give them to me now?
Because you got them now.
Then why are you making me this offer to go to your deathbed?
That was in an article that Sarah herself wrote, that he had agreed to give a full confession, but that the state would have to agree to administer a lethal injection within 10 days of that confession.
Isn't that almost like admitting your own guilt, though? Because if you are saying you're going to have to do the lethal injection, aren't you basically saying, I did it?
Pretty much. But there's a lot of things that are so weird to me, like what Michael said before. Like, why would you deny that you were involved in her murder and disappearance, but then confess to murdering 2 other people?
That you didn't.
That you didn't murder. Like, it just...
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
But like, say with like mental health issues, he might appear that he's guilty, but he might be creating guilt in his own mind.
Yeah.
So like, he might be creating this scenario around himself, and like, what's the purpose of him creating all these pipe bombs? Like, is he a terrorist or something? Like, why is he doing that? And is he doing that because he craves the paranoia? Like, he craves the, people looking into him and investigating him, and maybe they find out something about him that is going to explode, essentially.
I don't know.
What is because like, I don't think he's mentally stable.
No, he clearly isn't.
And the thing is, like, this case might, like, the attention that he's getting from this case might be kind of stirring something up in him. So he there's like excitement out of people wanting to know more about if he did it or not. And the mystery of it is more like, because like, he could have just come forward and just confessed. He's already in prison. He could have just come forward and confessed like what he did. But he wants that air of mystery around it. That's why he wants it on live TV. There's something there, And maybe he's got some dirt on these other cops as well, and that's why he knows that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, but it still begs the question, what happened to Alissa? Like, he clearly has mental health issues. There's clearly more going on. Do we think that he was involved in her disappearance?
Well, it sounds like he's the only suspect at the moment.
Yeah.
That, could have done it. It also sounds like that unless she created a whole new identity, that she has either had an accident or been murdered.
Mm.
The question then is like, did he do it? Was it an accident? Was it on purpose? Yeah.
What do you think, Om?
I think it's really hard to say. Michael brought up a really good point that I didn't consider before, is like all this media attention, and if he has been diagnosed with paranoid personality disorder, like he could be manifesting this own guilt in his head. It could explain why he built the pipe bombs, because he felt like people were already after him. Like, so it's really hard to say. Before we talked about this, I was like convinced that he did it, but now that we're talking about it, I'm not as 100% certain that it was him.
But yeah, like, maybe I'm not 100% either anymore.
I feel like, and I don't know because I haven't watched all of Sarah's TikTok videos, but I don't believe she ever mentioned that her father was diagnosed with paranoid personality disorder, which I think is really important to this whole story because it could explain a lot of his behaviors. I definitely think there was foul play when it comes to Alissa's murder, but I'm no longer like 100% convinced that it was the father. I think I want to know, like, what did he experience on the force when he was working? Since he has 6 kids, like, what do the other kids think? Like, does he have a history of sexual abuse, or like, I want to know all of these things because I feel like there's so much missing to the story that now, like, it draws up a lot of questions.
Like, I feel like what's been presented has been extremely one-sided. Like, you know what podcast that I think was done really well is Serial, and I think that it was done really well because it was told objectively and it gave you different facets of the day and the arguments, the pros and cons, like both ways. But I feel like this story in the media, in TikTok, everywhere that I've seen it reported has been extremely one-sided, and it doesn't give you a lot of information. Like, you're right, the mental health aspect of this is really important to understand why like things are manifesting the way that they are and why they are being presented the way that they are. So like, you might look at somebody that has those types of mental health issues, and you might automatically conclude something, but it's actually as a result of the illness and not as a result of the reality.
And that could also explain the person admitting to the crime as well.
Yeah.
Like, they might also want that notoriety.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those ones that they need evidence, and I think that's why possibly, they haven't got him yet, like they haven't convicted yet or anything like that, because you need evidence to prove that he did it. And even like he hasn't really confessed to doing this.
No.
And it's just like the daughter who was 12 years old at the time that didn't really know what was going on. So yeah, and like if she's suspected him the whole time and he hasn't said anything about it, then that answer's not there.
Right. And I think the other thing that makes it difficult as well, like, so a lot of these like other details that I talked to you guys through towards the end around, like, he had 2 identical trucks which he sold shortly after she disappeared, and all of these other things, like, these are memories from a child that happened almost 20 years ago. And how difficult is it for you to remember what you were doing, 15 years ago? Like, how clear are those memories? And when you think back about these things, do you remember what things were important and which ones were just coincidence? Like, it's very hard to pick through your memories and identify what's relevant and what isn't. So I feel that we're getting a really biased version of the story. And, I get that as well, because I think everybody wants justice for Alissa Turney, and everyone wants to know what happened so that she can be put to rest.
There could have been an accident. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And because he's extremely paranoid, he might have blamed himself for it or something like that. So now he's like creating a cover story because he doesn't want to be charged with the murder. Like, we don't know what happened that day. Or, you know, it could have been that she started off on, you know, wanting to leave and she went to run away and then something happened to her just after she left the house. And yeah, we don't really know. But yeah, without more evidence, it's really difficult to kind of say. And also without knowing the type of person he is, it's really difficult to say.
Yeah, I think Ami raises a really good point.
And to be fair to Sarah's part, like, I think if it was us, Kai, like, I would totally be 100% biased and be blaming whoever I thought was, like, most likely to be the person, because I would just want to have that closure. So, like, as a sister, I totally get where Sarah is coming from and why it is a little bit more biased in her presentation of the story. So, just to be fair there. But I think a lot is missing.
I think it's really tough to say, and I think it's also tough to say that, like, you know, what you were saying is that maybe he is guilty, but maybe it was an accident, so maybe the circumstances of what happened was actually not as sinister as how it's being made out to look. We really have no idea what happened that day, and I think that the mental health aspect of Michael's background as well is a huge factor in what transpired. It's not straightforward, I think.
Yeah. And you also don't know what else he was dealing with as well. Like, the paranoid personality disorder could have been, like, maybe the primary, but it's really common to have comorbid disorders as well, so there could have been something else.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So you were 100% before we started this video. And
I
what
know.
are you now?
After talking it through with you guys and, you know, rereading the information, well, okay, so I still think that he was involved in something happening to Alissa. I just think that the circumstances around it may not be as sinister as it's kind of being presented or as it's being portrayed to be. So I'm still pretty, like, I still have a high level of confidence that he was involved in whatever happened to Alissa. What I'm not clear about, though, are the circumstances of what actually transpired.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. When I was watching the TikTok videos initially, I was like 100% convinced. I was like, he did it, no question about it. But now after we talked about it and, like, a lot of good points were brought up, like, I don't know. And I think there's a lot that needs to be, like, brought to light before anyone can make, like, a definitive conclusion about what happened. Like, I totally agree. I think that he was involved some way, but I don't believe that it was as sinister. Like, yeah.
What do you think?
The mentality to kill someone is quite different than, like, it takes a lot, I think, to go over that line and actually kill someone. I still don't understand the pipe bomb stuff. Like, I don't understand what he was preparing for. Having so many pipe bombs, was it 26 pipe bombs in his possession? What were they for? Like, what is he planning?
I mean, we can look into what that manifesto said, but I'm not sure at this point.
Because if that was, like, pipe bombs are really, like, they're quite dangerous, you know, like, and that they could kill a whole bunch of people. So if he's looking to kill a lot of people using those bombs.
I think what's also interesting, though, is a pipe bomb is a very different mechanism of hurting a person versus a murder, which I think is much more, they're both murder, but it's more personal. So a pipe bomb, there's a bit of, you're a bit removed, right?
Yeah, like you place it and then leave and then it would explode.
Right.
And then, yeah.
And potentially your victims are, you don't have, like, a personal relationship with the people that you're targeting. But with Alissa, it's, for, at least from Michael's perspective, it's a completely different, more personal relationship. So I also feel like the method is completely different as well.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
You know.
Or he
I
could,
will also,
yeah.
I will also say, like, I think the media
always wants to have, like, a villain or someone to blame. Like, it's a good story to sell, and it makes viewers like be compassionate towards like the everything else, and like really puts you against the person that did it, as any crime should be, or like, you know, this type of crime should be. But like it's an easier story to sell if it's like you can villainize this person. So I don't know.
Okay, so like I said, you know, on the 9th of June, which was only, you know, a little over a month ago, the Phoenix Police Department submitted her case to the prosecutor's office for formal charges against Michael Turney. So I think that this is definitely a developing story. I think it'll be interesting to see what the coverage surfaces, whether or not a more complete view is going to be given around Michael Turney, his background, his mental health issues, all of those things to kind of flesh out what could have happened or what could have transpired on that day. And then also if there is any hard evidence that gets presented back with this case. You know, a lot of it sounds really circumstantial and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hard evidence, but it's also possible that those things have been kept confidential from the public at this time.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens as the story develops. But I do hope that they find justice for Alissa and they do find what happened to her.